I knew trouble was coming the moment 3 black SUVs rolled up my gravel drive, kicking dust high enough to blot out the sunrise like a bad omen. But even then, standing on my porch with a mug of burnt coffee in my hand, I didn't expect this kind of trouble. Not the kind that makes your blood go cold. Not the kind that follows you like a shadow that suddenly learned how to bite. The men climbed out one by one. Pressed suits, polished shoes, sunglasses too dark for the early morning glow. They didn't look like the kind of people who belonged anywhere near this part of rural Montana. They sure as hell didn't look like the kind of people who'd driven out here to talk nicely. And leading them was a woman whose heels hit the ground like she was announcing a verdict she'd already written. Her name was Marcia Paquette, president of the Cedar Ridge Lakeside Homeowners Association. HOA. I should have known. She approached without offering a greeting. Not even a fake smile. Just that clipped, icy voice that people like her sharpened through years of sending fines and threats in registered mail envelopes. "Mr. Carter," she said, holding a manila folder like it was a weapon, "the association has come to a unanimous decision. We will need your land deed for transfer. Immediately." I laughed. I actually laughed. Then I realized she wasn't kidding. "Transfer?" I asked. "Lady, this land's been in my family for 4 generations." She didn't blink. "And now it belongs to the Cedar Ridge Expansion Project. You're the last holdout. You've ignored our letters, our warnings, and our notices of acquisition. So now we're here. Consider this your final opportunity to cooperate." I stared at her, then at the suits behind her, then back at the woman who thought she could rewrite history because a committee voted on it in a conference room. The nerve. The absolute gall. You must be out of your goddamn mind. A couple of her men stepped forward, as though my voice raised some imaginary threat. They surrounded her like she was royalty, and maybe in her world she was. But on my land, out here, she was just an uninvited guest waiting to be shown the gate. Marcia opened the folder, and I caught a glimpse of forged signatures, official stamps that didn't belong on anything she held. "The deed, Mr. Carter. Or we'll have to proceed with alternatives." There it was. The thing that flipped the switch inside me. The thing that made the hairs on my neck stand up. I hate threats. Always have. So I set my coffee mug down slow, stepped back into the house, and grabbed the first thing my hand naturally reached for, a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. The wood stock was worn smooth, oil from years being held by men of my bloodline. Men who worked this land. Men who fought for it. Men who didn't bend for anyone. When I walked back out onto the porch, that fine layer of morning quiet cracked apart. The suit stiffened. A few reached inside their jackets. But I raised the shotgun, barrel angled down, not pointing at anyone, not yet, and said, plain as day, "Who the hell do you people think you are?" One of the bodyguards started toward me, but Marcia raised a hand to stop him. Her expression didn't break. If anything, she looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted her manicure. "This is unnecessary," she said. "Violence isn't required." I gave her a thin smile. "Good. Then don't make me use any." For the first time, her eyes hardened. Something in her facade cracked like a porcelain plate. "Mr. Carter, our investors will not be pleased with any interference. This is bigger than you. Bigger than your ranch. Bigger than whatever nostalgia you're clinging to. Do you understand?" I chambered around. The metallic click punched the air. "I understand perfectly," I said. A minute passed. The thick kind of minute that feels like a rope drawn tight between two sides waiting to snap. The suits shifted their weight, waiting for a command. Coyotes yipped in the distance, like even they could smell the tension. Marcia spoke again. "Slow. Deliberate. We gave you chances. Now you'll deal with consequences." Then she signaled her men, turned on her heel, and walked back to her SUV. The others followed. The engines roared to life, the tires spit gravel, and the convoy rolled away, leaving only the dust and the threat hanging in the air like smoke from a coming wildfire. For a long time, I stood there, shotgun in my hands, watching the last SUV disappear around the bend of the mountain road. My land stretched out across the valley, acres of pine, golden grass swaying, the old barn leaning like it had fought too many storms but refused to fall. The house behind me, the logs carved by men who lived harder lives than any HOA would ever know. My father's ashes scattered by the creek, My mother's rose garden still blooming because I took care of it every day. And some power-hungry HOA president thought she could just take it. A wind swept through the yard, carrying that stubborn mountain cold. And I swear, it felt like my father whispering in my ear, "Don't let them." I went back inside. I laid the shotgun on the kitchen table. I sat down, elbows on my knees, staring at the floorboards that had seen too many boots and too many memories. And that's when a question hit me. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because asking it out loud made it real. How far was I willing to go to protect what was mine? The truth? As far as it damn well took. But what I didn't know then, what none of us knew, was that the HOA wasn't just a handful of bored, petty neighbors with too much time on their hands. They were backed by something darker. Something deep-pocketed. Something that didn't like to hear the word no. Something that had already decided I was a problem they intended to remove. And they made one colossal mistake. They pushed a man who had nothing left to lose. A man who kept a shotgun loaded. A man who'd been quiet for too long. Now they were about to learn what happens when you try to steal land soaked with a kind of history you can't buy, can't bully out of a man, and sure as hell can't take without spilling something for it. I stood. I picked up the shotgun again. And as the sun finally cleared the ridge, I whispered to the empty house, to the ghosts of my bloodline, and maybe to the HOA fools who still thought they were in control. They wanted a fight. They were going to get one. I barely slept that night. Not because I was scared. Fear had burned out of me years ago. But because I knew people like Marsha Piquette. People who walked around with money and power like they were bulletproof. People who grew bold when they had an audience and grew cruel when they thought no one would call their bluff. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I kept the shotgun by the door, boots on, jacket half-zipped, and lights off. I wanted the house dark. I wanted them to think I was sleeping. I wanted them to think I was vulnerable. Around 2 in the morning, the wind shifted. A stillness fell across the yard. The kind of quiet that feels wrong, like the land itself was holding its breath. The animals sensed it too. The horses in the barn shifted restlessly. My old shepherd, Buck, lifted his head from the living room rug and growled low. That's when I knew. They were back. I stepped to the window, staying in the shadows. Through the moonlight, I saw 3 figures slipping across my yard from the tree line. Not the suits from earlier. These were quieter, dressed in dark clothes, moving like they'd done this before. No headlights, no engines, no words spoken. Professionals. So that's how the HOA wanted to play it. My hand tightened on the shotgun. They circled toward the back of the house where the mudroom door sat under a warped overhang. The door that always stuck unless you lifted and shoved at the same time. They didn't know that. I almost smiled. One of them whispered something I couldn't hear, then shouldered a small metal tool against the lock. It didn't budge. He tried again. Nothing. The third man signaled toward the kitchen window. That was a mistake. I stepped quietly to the kitchen, heart steady, breath slow. Buck followed at my heel, silent as a shadow. I waited behind the counter until I saw the glint of a crowbar's edge slip between the window frame and the sash. He pried once, wood cracked. Twice, glass rattled. On the third try, the window gave. I racked the shotgun loudly, because if a man's going to make a mistake like breaking into another man's home, the least you can do is warn him he's about to learn something the hard way. The man froze. The crowbar slipped from his fingers. That's far enough, I said, voice low. His head snapped toward me, but he didn't retreat. That told me everything I needed. He thought numbers would save him. He thought his buddies had the drop on me. He thought breaking into an isolated ranch house meant no consequences. He didn't know me at all. He lunged. I fired. The blast lit the room in a flash of white. The recoil thudded into my shoulder. The intruder fell backward out the window, hitting the dirt hard. The other 2 shouted. One moved left, one right, and boots thundered toward the back door. They were fast, coordinated. They'd planned this. They probably thought I'd panic, run, hide. Instead, I slid across the kitchen floor, reloaded in one practice motion, and kicked the back door shut just as the first man slammed into it from the outside. The old wood held. He hit it again, harder. Dust rained from the frame. I lifted the barrel toward the center panel and shouted, "Last warning." He answered by firing a shot through the door. Buck barked sharply and ducked behind the counter. I dropped to one knee, aimed through the new hole in the door, and fired back. A grunt sounded on the other side. Hit, but not down. Another man came through the mudroom window, diving fast, rolling behind my pantry cabinet like he knew the layout. He didn't know about the cast-iron skillet hanging next to him. As he rose to aim, I grabbed it and slammed it into the side of his head. He staggered, swung blindly, clipped my shoulder. I rammed the skillet again, this time with enough force to send him crashing into the wall. The back door crashed open then, splintering off its hinges, and the last intruder barreled through, bleeding from the shoulder, pistol drawn. I dug behind the kitchen table as shots cracked through the house. Wood exploded around me. The refrigerator door dented inward. A bullet zipped past my and buried into the cupboard behind me. Buck growled, then charged. Before I could stop him, my old shepherd launched himself at the man's leg, clamping down hard. The intruder screamed, stumbling, trying to shake him off. I rose from behind the table, aimed, and fired one more round, pellets tearing into the man's thigh and dropping him to the floor. He writhed, clutching his leg, the pistol skittering across the tiles. The house went quiet again. Only the sound of Buck's panting filled the space as he returned to my side, tail low but wagging bravely. "You good, boy?" I asked. He nudged my hand with a huff. No fear in him, just loyalty. I checked the pantry man, out cold. The back door man, cursing, bleeding, not going anywhere. The window man lay outside groaning, trying to crawl away. 3 intruders, sent by an HOA. What the hell had I stepped into? I tied them with a heavy rope I used for branding days, then dragged them into the barn, one by one. Buck followed, keeping watch. The night air felt colder, sharper, like the land itself was bracing for something worse. Inside the barn, I sat them on hay bales and waited for the first one to regain his senses. It didn't take long. He blinked awake, groggy, pain twisting across his face. You weren't supposed to fight back." I barked a humorless laugh. "You broke into my home with guns. What exactly did you expect me to do? Offer coffee?" He swallowed hard. "We were told you'd hand over the deed if pressured, that you wouldn't resist." "Who told you that?" He hesitated. I racked the shotgun again. Not a threat, just a reminder. "Name?" His eyes flickered. "Piquette. Marcia Piquette." "Of course. But she wasn't acting alone," he added quickly. "There's a developer behind this. Someone big. Someone dangerous. They want all the land around the lake. Your ranch is the last piece. And they sent you to kill me for it." No, he stammered. "Just scare you. Intimidate you. Make you leave on your own." I studied him carefully. "And if I didn't leave?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. I stood slowly, fury building like a storm rolling in over the peaks. "Tell your boss something for me," I said. He looked up, trembling. "Tell her she just woke the wrong damn bear." I turned off the barn light and walked out into the cold night, shotgun slung over my shoulder, Buck trailing close. This wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This was war. By morning, the sun rose slow and red, bleeding across the sky like it already knew what kind of day it was shining on. Fog clung to the low ground, rolling across the fields and swallowing the barn in a pale ghost haze. The horses paced, unsettled by the scent of blood and gunpowder that still hung in the air. I barely slept, not because I couldn't, but because I wouldn't. You don't rest when wolves circle your land. You stay awake. You keep watch. You make your plans. And I had one hell of a plan forming. The 3 intruders were still tied up in the barn, though I gagged them sometime around dawn when one of them kept begging for a reasonable negotiation. As far as I was concerned, negotiation ended when they put a bullet through my kitchen door. Buck sat beside me on the porch, ears perked, watching the road like he expected the night's visitors to return. That dog always had better instincts than most people I'd met. His fur was still bristled. He hadn't forgotten the gunshots. Neither had I. I sipped cold coffee and stared toward the mountains while replaying the intruder's words in my mind. There's a developer behind this. Someone big. Someone dangerous. It wasn't just Marcia Piquette's HOA greed. No, This was bigger, deeper, darker. The kind of thing where a handshake in a marble office turned into violence on a dirt road. I needed information, and I knew where I'd get it. By 8, I'd loaded the captured pistols, strapped one to my hip, and slung the shotgun across my back. Buck followed as I headed toward the barn. The 3 men tensed when I stepped inside. The one who talked last night, the one who took the shotgun blast of thigh, glared at me like I was a villain in his story. "Morning," I said, pulling up a stool. "We're gonna have a little chat." I removed his gag. He spat blood onto the hay. "You're insane." "Probably," I said, "but I'm also the only thing standing between you and whatever your boss will do when she finds out you failed." That shut him up good. "What's the developer's name?" I asked. He clenched his jaw. I leaned forward. "Son, I've been around long enough to know a stubborn man from a scared one, and you're scared. So either you tell me the truth, or I leave you here tied up when the coyotes come out tonight. Buck, and I don't mind sharing the leftovers." Buck growled on cue. The man swallowed. "Hard. His name is Alexander Brown," he finally said, "CEO of Brown Properties. He invests in land all across the Northwest, buying, flipping, building luxury resorts and private golf clubs. He's been eyeing Cedar Ridge Lake for years." The name rang a bell. Not because I'd met the man, but because you couldn't avoid hearing about him if you lived within 300 miles of civilization. A corporate land baron. Rich, unchecked, untouchable. Until now. Why my ranch? I asked. It's the last parcel he needs to lock down the lake. The HOA's been working with him for months. Piquette gets a big payout if she delivers your land. My fist tightened. That wasn't just greed. That was betrayal wrapped in legal paperwork. What was the plan tonight? I asked. Force you to leave. Burn something if necessary. Make the property look abandoned. Brown's lawyers would take care of the rest. Burn something. Burn my land. I stood so fast the stool toppled. Rage didn't come in a wave. It came in a quiet, controlled flood that washed through every vein until only purpose remained. "I'm done talking," I said. I gagged them again, left them tied, and walked out of the barn. I'd decide what to do with them later. Right now, I needed answers from the source. Marcia Piquette. The HOA loved to pretend they were important, but their building sat in an old strip mall outside town, wedged between a nail salon and a tax prep office that never seemed open. Pathetic. But today, that sad little building was the first battlefield in a war they started. I climbed into my old Ford pickup, Buck hopping into the passenger seat. The engine growled awake like it remembered its purpose. Gravel spat behind us as I tore down the road toward town. The drive took 15 minutes, but it felt longer. Every fence line reminded me of my family. Every pine tree whispered about roots deeper than money. Every stretch of open land reminded me of what men like Brown wanted to pave over. I wasn't letting that happen. When I pulled into the strip mall, the parking lot was empty except for a shiny black sedan, too polished, too new, too expensive to belong to any local. Probably hers. Perfect. I had the shotgun under my jacket when I walked in. The HOA office door chimed cheerfully, as if it didn't know it was about to witness something that didn't fit into its bylaws. Inside, Marcia Piquette sat behind her desk, typing something on a laptop with the smuggest little expression I'd ever seen. She didn't look up until the door shut behind me. When she did, her smile froze like it hit a brick wall. "Mr. Carter," she said slowly, eyeing the dirt on my boots, the torn sleeve from last night's fight. "You look unwell." I stepped closer. 3 men broke into my house last night. Her jaw tightened. "That's unfortunate. They said you sent them." "They were lying. They said you're working with a developer named Brown." Her eyes flickered, just a little, but enough for me to see the truth. "I don't know who." I slammed both hands on her desk so hard her laptop jumped. Papers fluttered. She flinched. "Good. You cross a line." I growled. "Sending letters is one thing. Sending armed men in the middle of the night? That's another. You want my land? Fine. You're going to tell me why. And you're going to tell me what Brown has planned." Her lips tightened into a thin, venomous line. "You can't threaten me," she whispered. "I have legal protection. I have power. I leaned in close. You have no idea what you have, I said, because you have no idea what you're up against. She hesitated. For the first time, fear cracked through her polished exterior. And then she said something I didn't expect. You can't stop him. Watch me. No, she said, voice trembling. I mean, you literally can't. Carter, you don't understand what Brown is capable of. He doesn't negotiate. He takes. He replaces. Anyone in his way disappears. I let that sink in. So that's your excuse. I asked softly. You let him swallow the town because you're scared of him. I did what I had to, she snapped. He promised us new homes, security, a resort, a future. If I didn't cooperate, he would've. She stopped. Would've what? I demanded. Her silence told me everything. Brown wasn't just a developer. He was a threat, a predator, a man who owned people the way he wanted to own land. Well, I said, stepping back, you can tell Brown something from me. She swallowed. What? I met her eyes with a calm she didn't understand. Tell him I'm not for sale. Then I turned and walked out before she could answer, because I'd just made up my mind. Brown started this. I was going to finish it. I drove out of that strip mall with my jaw clenched tight and my knuckles white against the steering wheel. Not because of fear, but because of clarity. A cold, surgical clarity that only comes when you finally see your enemy without a mask. Alexander Brown, a man who operated in the shadows of property deals, corporate acquisitions, and backroom negotiations. A man who used HOAs as his foot soldiers, local officials as pawns, and fear as leverage. A man who thought my ranch was just another line item on his portfolio. He didn't know he'd just kicked the wrong hornet nest. Buck sat quietly beside me, staring out the window. His ears twitched every time the engine growled. Dogs know when war's coming. They can smell it before we do. As we left town, the mountains rose to the west, dark silhouettes against the midday sun. I couldn't shake the conversation with Marcia Piquette. Her trembling voice, her admission that even she was scared of Brown. That meant something. HOA presidents don't scare easy. They live off intimidation. But what kind of man scares people who make a living scaring others? I needed answers. Real ones. Not from Marcia and not from her cowardly men tied up in my barn. I needed someone who knew Brown's operations. Someone who'd seen behind the curtain. And I knew just a man. Old friends and old wounds. Sheriff Daniel Harlow's office sat at the edge of town, a squat brick building with peeling paint and a flagpole that leaned like it was tired of standing watch. Harlow wasn't just a sheriff. He was someone I used to trust. Someone I fought beside during wildfire seasons. Someone who drank beer on my porch and helped bury my father. But time changes people. And power changes them faster. When I walked in, Deputy Grayson, young, nervous, still smelling like the academy, straightened behind the front desk. Mr. Carter, he said cautiously. Sheriff's inside. I nodded once and opened the door without waiting for permission. Sheriff Harlow sat behind his desk, boots propped up, reading paperwork that he dropped the moment he saw me. Luke Carter, he said slowly. Heard there was a disturbance out your way last night. Disturbance? I growled. 3 armed men broke into my home. That's more than a disturbance. Put the boots down and listen. I snapped. His eyes narrowed. What's your tone? No, I said. Not today. Harlow sighed, leaned forward, and folded his hands. What do you want, Luke? Information, I said, about Alexander Brown. The sheriff went still. His jaw flexed. He looked not at me, but at the wall behind me, like he was calculating something. Brown's not your concern, he finally said. Let it go. Let it go. I stepped closer. He sent men to kill me. I'll scare you. Does that make it better? Harlow rubbed his forehead. Luke, you don't understand the situation. I slammed my palms on his desk. Then help me understand. Grayson peeked in through the doorway, but Harlow waved him off. When we were alone again, the sheriff leaned in close. You're not the first man to resist Brown, he said quietly. And those others? They didn't just lose their land. They disappeared. No bodies found. No reports filed. Just gone. I felt my blood ice over. And you're telling me this now? I'm telling you to walk away, Harlow said. Grab your dog, grab your guns, grab whatever you want, and leave the state before it's too late. I'm not running. I know. He sighed. That's what worries me. Who's protecting Brown? I asked. You? The county judge? The HOA? Harlow's silence was louder than an answer. You've been compromised, I said softly. He winced, but he didn't deny it. Luke, he whispered, Brown owns half a county. He funds elections. He buys silence. And has got people in places they don't belong. And he wants my land. He wants the lake. Your land is just a last domino. Well, I said, stepping back, I'm not falling. Harlow stood suddenly, eyes burning. You can't fight this, Luke. I already am. He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped when he saw something in my expression. Something hard, something unmovable. He sighed. You didn't hear this from me, he said quietly. But Brown's men are staying at the Ridgeview Lodge. Private security. Ex-military. They move when he tells them to. No questions asked. And Brown himself. Arriving tonight. Midnight flight. Coming to finalize the acquisition. I nodded. That was all I needed. I turned to leave, but Harlow called after me. Luke, don't get yourself killed. I paused at the door. Tell Brown the same. The Ridgeview reckon. I didn't go home. Not yet. I drove straight to the Ridgeview Lodge, a glass and timber luxury hotel perched above the cedar forest like a predator watching its territory. The kind of place where wealthy men hid behind stone fireplaces and overpriced bourbon. I parked behind a row of maintenance trucks, pulled my jacket tight over the shotgun, and circled to the service entrance. Buck stayed in the truck, alert but quiet. He knew when stealth mattered. I slipped inside. The hallway smelled like bleach and citrus, with a faint hum of industrial freezers. I kept to the shadows, listening. Voices echoed from a nearby room, deep, commanding, not the tone of bellboys or janitors. I moved closer. A door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. 4 men sat around a table with blueprints spread out, not of the lodge, of Cedar Ridge Lake, and there, right in the center, marked with red circles and bold labels. My ranch. One of the men jabbed a finger at it. Brown wants a Carter property cleared by the end of the week. Burn it, another asked. Only if necessary. He wants the land intact. But the owner won't go peacefully. They all laughed. That's when I saw something that made my stomach twist. A second blueprint, not just of the land, but of my house. Every room documented, every door marked, every window measured. My blood ran hot. I pulled back into the hallway, breathing slow, forcing myself to stay quiet. I wanted to storm in and end them, right there, right then. But 4 men in a confined room with unknown weapons? Not smart. I needed a bigger message, a louder one, a warning. For Brown, for his men, this was my land. And if they wanted war, I'd start it before they even realized they were on the battlefield. The fire they didn't expect. I slipped into the hotel generator room and found what I needed, fuel cans. 2 of them. My mind raced, not with chaos, but with calculation, precision. I didn't kill people unless forced. But sending a message? That was different. 10 minutes later, the security SUV parked outside the lodge erupted in a tower of flames, fire roaring up the pine trees, black smoke curling into the sky. I stood on the ridge above it, watching, shotgun slung over my shoulder. Inside, the security team scrambled. Shouts echoed through the forest. Men ran, trying to douse the blaze. Good. Let them know the fight had begun. Let them know the quiet rancher wasn't quiet anymore. Let them know that everything they had planned was about to burn. And the best part? Brown wasn't even in town yet. But when he arrived, I'd be waiting. The burning SUV lit the night sky like a beacon, one I wanted them to see. By the time the flames finally died down, I was already miles away, wind tearing through the windows of my old Ford as Buck watched the road ahead with restless focus. I didn't run from Ridgeview Lodge. I regrouped, because midnight was coming, and with it, Alexander Brown, the man behind the threats, the man behind the forged documents, the man who decided my family's land was just another trophy to hang in his glass office. While the county slept, I waited on a ridge overlooking the small municipal A-strip 10 miles south of town. Most people forgot it even existed. Dusty runway lights half burned out, a single hangar leaning under decades of neglect. Perfect place for a private jet to land unnoticed. Perfect place for an ambush. I wasn't there to kill Brown, yet, but I wanted him scared. I wanted him rattled. I wanted him to know he'd pick a fight with the one man in this county who wouldn't break. Buck sat next to me in the tall grass, ears twitching. The cold mountain wind swept across the ridge, blending with the hum of insects and the distant rumble of trucks from the highway. At 11:57 p.m., the night sky split with the thunder of engines. There he is, I muttered. The jet descended like a silver hawk, landing smoothly on the cracked asphalt. Its light swept across the field, revealing nothing but dust and weeds. But I was already moving, weaving my way down the slope, sticking to the shadows. I positioned myself behind the old fencing near the far end of the runway, close enough to hear voices but far enough to stay hidden. A black Escalade rolled out from behind the hangar, headlights off. Figures emerged one by one. 4 security men. Hard-faced, rigid, ex-military, if I had to guess. Then him, Alexander Brown. He was shorter than I expected, broad, wealthy, tailored suit that probably cost more than my truck. His hair slicked back, his expression cold and bored, like he was arriving for a weekend golf trip rather than a land grab back by hired muscle. One of the guards opened the door for him. "Welcome to Cedar Ridge, sir." Brown didn't reply. He just scanned the dark horizon as if he sensed the wrongness in the air. "Good," the guard continued. "The Carter situation is being handled. Our team." Brown raised a hand, silencing him. "When you say handled," he said softly, "you mean permanently, yes?" His voice was colder than the November wind. "Yes, sir," the guard said. "He won't be a problem much longer." Brown nodded once. "Good. I don't enjoy loose ends." My jaw tightened. Loose ends. So that's all I was to him. A stubborn thread to clip. Buck growled softly, but I placed a hand on his head, calming him. "Not yet. Not here. Not until Brown knew I was coming for him." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the object I prepared, a small metal cylinder I'd rigged with a pull tab. Not a bomb. Not even close. But it would sure as hell get their attention. I waited until Brown was mid-stride toward the Escalade. Then I tossed the cylinder onto the tarmac. It clinked once, then erupted in a violent spray of sparks and blinding white light. The guard shouted, drawing weapons. Brown ducked behind the SUV, shouting orders. Their formation broke immediately, panicked, undisciplined. Good. Professionals shouldn't panic that fast. These were mercenaries, not soldiers. The flare smoke rose thick and high. I stepped out of the shadows. 20 yards away, close enough for them to see me clearly. Brown looked up, stunned. "You!" he barked. His guards aimed their rifles, but I held my hands out wide, empty. "Relax," I called. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be in the ground." Brown's jaw clenched. "You're Luke Carter. Smart man. You made a mistake coming here." I laughed, loud enough for the whole runway to hear. "I came to give you a message." One of the guards stepped forward. "Drop your weapons." "I'm not armed," I lied, shotgun hidden under my coat. Brown raised a hand again, holding his men back. "Message first. Then we'll decide what to do with you." I stepped closer, boots crunching on gravel. "Listen carefully," I said, voice low enough to force them to strain in the quiet. "You're not getting my land. Not through forged paperwork. Not through the HOA. Not through your thugs. Not through fear." Brown smirked. "Everyone breaks. Carter, you'll break too." "No," I said, "but I'll tell you what will break." His smile faded. "Your plans. Your timelines. Your investors' patience. And if you keep pushing," I lifted my jacket just enough to show the shotgun grip. "Your men." The guards tensed. Brown's eyes narrowed with interest, not fear. That told me everything I needed to know about his ego. Threats don't work on me, he said calmly. This isn't a threat, I replied. It's a courtesy, the last one you'll get. Then I tapped the second cylinder in my pocket, this one rigged with a fuse. I tossed it under the escalate. Brown's eyes widened. Move! His men scattered. I turned and ran. Buck sprinted beside me as the cylinder erupted with a deafening sonic charge, a percussive blast loud enough to shatter windows but harmless to flesh. The SUV rocked violently, alarms blaring. Guards scrambled, shouting orders into radios. Brown clawed his way upright, coughing through the cloud of dust. Carter, he bellowed, this is war. I didn't look back. Exactly, I muttered. Buck and I disappeared into the dark tree line before light swept the ridge. Back at the ranch. By the time I reached home, dawn was creeping over the valley. I checked the barn. My 3 intruders were still tied, still breathing, still terrified. Good. I stood at the barn door, looking out over my land, my father's land, my grandfather's before him. Pine trees swayed like sentinels. The creek glimmered silver. The house stood scarred but proud, bullet holes and all. Brown wanted a war. He'd get one. But I wasn't fighting alone anymore, because after last night, Brown had no idea what was coming next. By sunrise, the county sheriff arrived at my gate, uninvited, but expected. Sheriff Danner climbed out of his cruiser, expression tight, jaw working side to side like a man chewing on a problem too big to swallow. His deputy stayed in the car, eyes scanning my property like he expected to see bodies hanging from fence posts. He wasn't far off. What the hell happened last night, Luke? Danner asked, adjusting his hat as he approached. Define last night, I replied. The home invasion, the attempted ambush, or the part where a billionaire tried to blow smoke up this town's backside with forged land deeds. He sighed. News travels fast, especially when explosions are involved. I shrugged. Wasn't an explosion, just a sonic charge. That still counts as an explosion to most folks. Well, I said, most folks aren't very technical. Buck sat beside me, hackles raised. He didn't trust Danner. Truth was, neither did I. But I trusted him more than Brown, and that counted for something today. Danner looked past me. Where are the men who attacked you? In the barn, I said plainly. His eyebrows rose. Alive. Very. Armed. Not anymore. Cooperative. They will be. He nodded slowly. Mind if I talk to them? Yes, I mind. His mouth tightened into a grim line. Luke. They'll be fine, I added, but they are not leaving until I hear from the state assessor's office. Brown forged documents. I've got proof. He stared at me for a long moment before exhaling hard. You've always been a pain in my ass. I try. But even as he spoke, he scanned the bullet holes peppering my siding, the scorch marks on the driveway, the broken glass near the porch. His eyes softened. You were defending your home. And I'll keep doing exactly that. Danner rubbed his temples. Look, Luke, Brown has money, influence, legal teams. You've got a dog, a shotgun, and a barn full of zip-tied mercenaries. You forgot the part where this is my land. He met my stare. That might not be enough. Has been so far. He wanted to say more, but his radio crackled violently. Sheriff, you need to hear this. Brown filed an injunction. I didn't catch the rest, but I knew. Brown wasn't backing down. He was escalating. Danner looked sick when he lowered the radio. They are calling you a domestic terrorist, Luke. I laughed. Hard. That's rich, I said. Man tries to steal my ranch, sends goons to kill me, and I'm the terrorist. Danner didn't laugh. This is a federal matter now, he said quietly. Good. Let them come. The visitors. At noon, 3 SUVs rolled up my driveway. Federal plates, suits, and sunglasses. Buck growled deep in his chest, sounding more bear than dog. The lead agent stepped out, black suit immaculate, hair too neat for a man who'd ever chopped wood or followed a blood trail through cedar thickets. He approached with a folder tucked under one arm. Luke Carter. Depends who's asking. He ignored the question and handed me the folder. Inside were neatly printed pages, aerial photos of my land, skin signatures I'd never seen, mineral rights I apparently no longer owned, and an acquisition date set for 2 days from now. 2 days. Brown was betting on speed and intimidation. I closed the folder. None of this is real. It's filed with the county, the agent said evenly, legally binding unless disproven. And how do I disprove it? You hire attorneys, file motions, challenge the paperwork. And while I do that, Brown gets to bulldoze my house. The agent didn't answer. He didn't need to. Behind him, another SUV door opened, and there he was, Alexander Brown. Fresh shoot, perfect tie, calm as a snake in winter. He walked toward me with the smugness of a man who thought he'd just checkmated an amateur. Hello again, Carter. Buck bared his teeth. Brown smiled at him. You should really leash that animal. He's not the animal you should be worried about. Brown chuckled. I admire your spirit. Truly. But this is over. The acquisition is approved. My crews will arrive in 48 hours. You have until then to vacate. Dan had stepped onto my porch, and hovering near his belt, unsure whether to stop this or watch it unfold. I stepped closer to Brown, too close for his guard's comfort. Guns shifted. Hands twitched. But Brown, arrogant to the bone, didn't move. This isn't a business dispute. I told him. This is a line in the earth. And you crossed it. He tilted his head. You had your chance to walk away. So did you. He smirked. Violence won't win this, Carter. I don't need violence to win. He raised an eyebrow, amused. Really? What do you have? I leaned in. The truth. For the first time, Brown's smile faltered. Just a fraction. But enough. I continued, voice low. I have your men in my barn. I have body cam recordings from county deputies showing you tried to seize land illegally. I have wire logs from an HOA meeting where your people admitted to forging signatures. He blinked, and I added, I have every damn camera on my property recording last night's attack. He went still, dead still. What did you say? He whispered. Evidence. I repeated, hard evidence. You're lying. No, I said, I'm done lying, and I'm done hiding. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. The screen displayed a single phrase. Uploaded, distributing. Brown's face drained of color. Uploaded where? He hissed. Everywhere, I said. Sheriff's Department, County Recorder's Office, 3 national outlets, and a backup server that auto-dumps the files if anything happens to me. The agent stiffened. Dana's eyebrows shot up. Brown stared at me with pure, unfiltered hatred. You think this will stop me? No, I said, but it sure as hell slows you down. He stepped closer, whispering so only I could hear. This isn't over. I met his glare without flinching. It is for you. Aftermath. The suits left. The agents left. Even Brown left, though he looked back at my ranch like a gambler forced to walk away from the table with empty pockets. Dana approached, scratching his chin. You really upload all that? Most of it. You bluffing? Some of it. He nodded. Good bluff. He looked out toward the trail of dust left by Brown's caravan. You really think it's done? No, I said. Men like him never quit. They don't know how. Dana nodded grimly. So what now? I looked out over my land, cedar swaying, creek whispering, buck at my side. Now! I said softly, now I rebuild. And if he comes back? I rested my hand on Buck's head. Then I'll be ready. Because a man's home isn't 4 walls and a deed. It's a promise. And mine wasn't broken. Not yet. Not ever.